My name is Nelson. This is the story of my life. A story that began with hope and ended in a way I never imagined. I'm a husband and a father of four. I once lived with my family in Ojodu Bega, Lagos. If you know that side of Lagos, then you know what I mean when I say life was never easy. Oyedubege is the kind of place where the air is never silent. The horns of buses, the shouts of conductors, the hawkers crying pure water, gala, recharge card, the endless stream of people carrying their worries like invisible loads. But even in the chaos, there was life. There was love. There was survival. My family, my wife, my children, they were my anchor. We lived in a small rented apartment, barely large enough to contain our laughter, our tears, and our dreams. The walls were cracked, the rent was heavy, but still we called it home. Every morning, I would wake before dawn, listening to the muffled snores of my children. I would look at their tiny feet tucked under warm blankets, and I would whisper a prayer. God, give me strength. Give me something better for them. My wife, she was my warrior. Pregnant at the time, she still found a way to cook, to smile, to encourage me when despair threatened to choke me. But Lagos was a cruel teacher. Rent collectors did not care about your tears. The market did not lower its prices because your pocket was empty. And the future looked like a road with no light at the end. Then one day, a door opened, or so I thought. It began with my friend, Prince. Prince lived not too far from me, also in Lagos. He was a family man too, with three children of his own. If you saw him on the street, you might not look twice, but those of us who knew him understood. Prince carried something inside him, a strange mixture of hope and desperation. He was the kind of man who could smile even when he hadn't eaten, the kind of man who could dream when reality had already broken most others. But dreams alone cannot feed children. And Prince had been working a job where the salary had not been paid for 4 months. Imagine that. 4 months of sweat, 4 months of waking before dawn, 4 months of coming home with nothing in his pocket. Yet somehow he still carried hope. One afternoon, we sat outside a buka near Beggar Bridge. The buka was nothing fancy, just a wooden shack with smoke curling from the cooking pot. The smell of palm oil and pepper soup mixing with the scent of dust and petrol from the road. We ordered the cheapest rice and stew with one piece of meat to share between us. And as we ate, Prince leaned close, lowering his voice as though he was about to reveal the secret of the universe. Prince, he said, there is a way out, a chance to travel abroad. Singapore. They say menial jobs are available. You start small, then you rise. Later you bring your family, or you save and choose another country. I remember pausing, the spoon halfway to my mouth. Abroad? Singapore? It sounded like a dream too big for the likes of me. At first I thought it was just another false promise. Lagos is full of smooth talkers, men who sell hope the way hawkers sell groundnuts. But something in Prince's eyes held me. Something told me this was not just talk. I was jobless. I had mouths to feed. My wife was pregnant again. Even in 3 months, I could not see a guarantee of any job in Lagos. And so, with a sigh heavy enough to break my ribs, I told him, Prince, I'm about to sell my house. If this thing is real, count me in. That day, without knowing it, my life took a turn. A turn that would carry me far from Oyodubega. A turn that would lead me into places I could never have imagined. The men who called themselves agents were smooth talkers. Their tongues dripped honey, but their eyes hid something darker. They told us the journey would pass through Sierra Leone first. With a Sierra Leonean passport, we would not need a visa to enter Singapore. Simple, easy, no obstacles. The fee? 1 million naira each, up front. 1 million naira. For men like us, it was not just money. It was blood. It was sweat. It was a piece of our souls. Prince managed to raise his after finally receiving just 1 month's long delayed salary. As for me, I packed my life savings, every naira I had scraped together over years of hustling. We waited. 1 month passed, then two, then three. The silence was heavy, but still we hoped. Finally, the agent came back. He told us the Sierra Leone route was casted, but there was a new plan. We would fly directly from Nigeria to Singapore. There was a catch. We had to pay the remaining balance, 2.5 million naira. I remember staring at him, the words echoing in my skull. 2.5 million. For me, it was everything I had and more. But the agent smiled, his teeth flashing like the promise of gold. Do it, he said. Do it for your children. Do it for your future. This is your only chance. And we did it. We told ourselves it was for the children, for the future. When the call finally came, it was like rain on dry soil. Your visa is ready. Those 4 words lit up my entire world. For weeks, my wife and I had been living in the shadow of uncertainty. Every knock on the door made my heart race. Every call I missed felt like a missed destiny. I rushed to meet the agent. The envelope was in his hand. My fingers trembled as I opened it. There it was, a visa to Singapore. My name, stamped, official, real. In that moment, I believed. Tears filled my eyes. My wife cried too when I showed her. For the first time in a long while, hope entered our home. She touched a belly swollen with pregnancy and whispered, "Maybe this child will be born into a better life." I didn't know it then, but that was the last pure joy we would share before the storm. The day of my flight, I woke before dawn. I dressed carefully, not just in clothes, but in dreams. My small bag was packed. One change of clothes, a few toiletries, and a folded piece of paper where I had written the names of people I would one day send money to. At the airport, the smell of roasted groundnuts mixed with the sterile scent of departure halls. Travelers moved past me, some laughing, some nervous, some too tired to feel anything. I joined the line for immigration. My heart pounded. Each step forward felt like a step into the unknown. When it was my turn, the officer took my passport and studied it. He frowned, then looked at me. "Where are you going?" "Singapore, sir." He flipped through the pages again. The silence stretched. Then he said words that nearly broke me. "This visa, I'm not sure." Wait aside. My legs almost gave way. My throat dried. I stood there, sweating, as if every eye in the hall was on me. Minutes passed like hours. Then, without warning, the officer returned my passport. "Go." Next. I almost cried right there. I stumbled forward, clinging to that tiny mercy. I boarded the plane, my heart heavy but alive. The engines roared, and as Nigeria shrank beneath me, I whispered a prayer. "Lord, let this not be a mistake." When we landed, the air felt different, clean, sharp, almost too perfect. Singapore was a world far from Lagos. The streets were spotless, the buildings tall and proud, the trains moving like veins of steel beneath the city. But beauty does not feed you. The agent's promises began to crumble almost immediately. There were no jobs waiting, no easy paths, only confusion. The first night I slept in a cramped apartment with 8 other men, the smell of sweat and hopelessness filling the room. Each man had a story, each one carrying the weight of lies they had believed. We worked menial jobs where we could, construction, dishwashing, anything, long hours, little pay, sometimes nothing at all. Employers took advantage of our desperation. Back home, my wife called often. "Nelson, the rent has expired. What should we do?" "Nelson, the children's school is threatening to send them home." "Nelson, I am weak. The baby? Her voice was full of tears. Mine was full of silence. What could I say when I myself was drowning? At night, I lay on the floor, staring at the ceiling, listening to the snores and coughs of the men around me, and I thought of home, of Prince, of the decision that had led me here. The glitter of abroad was fading fast. 5 days before my visa was due to expire, panic began to gnaw at me like a rat in the dark. I had been in Singapore for weeks, yet I had nothing to show. No savings, no secure job, no plan for renewal. The men around me whispered of immigration raids, of brothers arrested and locked away like criminals, of deportations where people were sent home in shame. I could not imagine returning that way. That was when another helper appeared. He promised me a way out, a route into Indonesia. With these papers, he said, you can stay longer. You will be safe. You will find better jobs. His words were sugar to a starving man. I handed him $500, money I did not even have, but had borrowed from another stranded Nigerian who swore we were brothers in suffering. I waited for my documents. They never came. The man vanished like smoke. His number stopped connecting. His face never seen again. I had been scammed a second time. This time the shame was deeper, because now I knew better, yet I still fell. With no option left, I crossed into Malaysia with a friend. We moved at night silently, avoiding questions, avoiding stares. My passport felt like both a lifeline and a curse in my pocket. But Malaysia was no different. I slept in tiny rooms, sometimes on bare tiles, sometimes sharing one mattress with 3 men. We walked when work came, carrying cement, offloading tires, washing dishes, always temporary, always underpaid, always uncertain. The days blurred. Hunger became a constant, and yet the worst pain was not in my belly, but in my heart. Every time my wife called, I felt the weight of failure. Nelson, I cannot pay the hospital bill. Nelson, the landlord has thrown our things outside. Nelson, the children are asking when you will come back. Each word was a knife. Then came the call that broke me. Her voice was small, broken, as if she was whispering through tears. The baby is gone. I froze. My chest tightened until I could not breathe. She had lost the pregnancy, the stress, the burden, the endless waiting. It had been too much for her body to bear. I sat on the cold floor of that Malaysian room, my head in my hands, and wept. I wept like a child, not just for the baby, but for the life that had died inside me too. Through all this, Prince never stopped calling. Nelson, should I come now? The agents say it's still possible. Each time he asked, my heart twisted. I wanted to tell him yes, to share the suffering, to prove I was not alone in this madness, but I could not. I told him again and again, wait, not yet. Let me find something stable. But inside, I was screaming, Prince, don't come. Don't make the same mistake. Don't follow me into this darkness. Still, debts were piling. My rent back home had expired. My family had nowhere. My wife was mourning. My children were hungry. I was thousands of miles away, carrying shame in a foreign land. One night, lying awake in the suffocating heat of that cramped room, I made a decision. I would return home, even if it meant borrowing again for the flight, even if it meant facing whispers and laughter, even if it meant shame, because staying abroad, broken and trapped, was worse than going home with nothing. The day I booked my return ticket, I felt both relief and defeat. Relief, because I was finally living the shadow life of Malaysia. Defeat, because I was returning with nothing. On the flight back to Nigeria, I stared out the window, watching the clouds float beneath us. Once, those clouds had felt like a symbol of my rising. Now they looked like the ceiling of a prison I had built with my own hands. The man seated beside me asked casually, "How was your stay?" I forced a smile. It was fine, but inside I was screaming. It was hell. When the plane touched down at Murtala Mohammed Airport, my chest tightened, my hands shook. I knew what awaited me. As I walked through arrivals, the faces of other passengers lit up when they saw their loved ones. Families embraced. Children ran into fathers' arms. Wives kissed husbands with joy. But for me, there was no one waiting. My shame was too heavy for a welcome. I returned to Ojodu Berger, not to the home I had left, but to an empty space. My landlord had thrown my family's belongings into the street. The walls of our former house now sheltered strangers. When I reached my wife, she was sitting on a borrowed mat in a friend's room, her eyes swollen from tears. My children sat quietly beside her, their faces thin, their stomachs empty. The youngest looked at me and asked, "Daddy, did you bring us bread?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to say yes, but I had nothing. No bread, no hope, not even enough strength to smile. The neighbors whispered. Some laughed. "So he has come back empty-handed." Others pitied me. "Ah, what a waste." But the whispers cut all the same. At night, when everyone was asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My wife's soft breathing beside me, my children called on the floor, and the weight of death crushing my chest. I asked myself, was this the future I sold everything for? Was this the dream I chased across the seas? Life did not magically heal after my return. The debts remained. The house was gone. The baby was buried in sorrow, and the neighbors never stopped talking. But slowly, something inside me began to shift. One day, as I walked through the market, I saw a group of young men whispering excitedly. They were speaking of a new agent. "This one is genuine," they said. "He will take you to Dubai or Canada. Life will change." Their faces reminded me of myself. The same hunger, the same fire, the same desperation. And for the first time, I realized this was a cycle, a trap, a wheel that kept turning, crushing men like me under its weight. That night, I told my wife, I will not fall for it again. I cannot. She looked at me, tired but firm. "Nelson, we may be poor, but at least you are here, alive, with us." Her words were the first balm on my wounds. Today, I still live with the scars of that journey. The debts cling like shadows. The questions from my children remain. The laughter of neighbors still echoes. But I have learned something powerful. Not all that glitters abroad is gold. When men promise you heaven, be careful. Sometimes they are only leading you into hell. And so, if you ever hear my story, remember this. Hope is a dangerous thing when it is built on lies. But truth, even bitter truth, can save you from drowning in the same river that nearly swallowed me. My name is Nelson. This is my life. Not long after I returned, Prince visited me. We sat outside the same buka where this whole journey had begun. The same plastic chairs, the same rice and stew, but everything else had changed. He leaned forward, his voice low. "Nelson, tell me the truth. Should I still go?" I looked into his eyes. Behind them, I saw hunger, not just for food, but for escape. I saw the same fire that had once burned in me. My throat tightened. I wanted to tell him, "Yes, go. Maybe you will succeed where I failed." But my scars screamed louder. "Prince," I whispered, "don't." He frowned. "But Nelson, you saw it yourself. Men are making it. Some are building houses, sending money back. Are you saying all of them are lies?" I sighed. "Not all. But you don't see the ones who suffer. You don't see the men who sleep under bridges in Singapore, or the ones hiding from police in Malaysia, or the ones who die quietly, too ashamed to go home. You only hear the stories of the few who make it. Prince, I was there. I saw the truth, he went quiet. His spoon clinked against the plate. Finally, he said, "So what do we do? Just sit here? Watch our children starve?" And that was the real question. Sometimes in the evenings, I would sit with other men who had returned broken, just like me. We became a small brotherhood of the disappointed. One was Musa, who had sold his farmland in Kaduna to chase a job in Qatar. He now worked as a bus conductor in Lagos. Another was Chike, who had left for Turkey, only to be deported after 6 months. He came back with nothing except a Turkish phrase he muttered when drunk. Hayat zor. Life is hard. Together, we shared our stories like open wounds. Some cried, some cursed, some drank until their tongues grew heavy with regret. We called ourselves the Shadow Men because that was what we felt like. Men who had chased light abroad but returned only as shadows of who we once were. At home, things were not easier. My wife, once full of laughter, spoke less. Her silence was heavier than words. Sometimes, at night, I would watch her staring at the wall, her hands folded tightly across her chest. One night I asked, "Do you regret marrying me?" She turned to me slowly, her eyes tired. "Nelson, you are the father of my children, but sometimes I regret that we believed too much in promises. We thought suffering had an end, but it only changed clothes." Her words cut deep because I realized the truth. I had not only lost my money, I had lost part of her trust. In desperation, I went to my church pastor. He listened quietly as I poured out my story. The lies of the agents, the hunger abroad, the debts, the miscarriage, the shame. When I finished, he placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "Nelson, the Bible says, what shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world yet loses his soul?" I shook my head bitterly. "But Pastor, I did not gain the world. I gained nothing." He smiled sadly. "You gained wisdom, my son. Painful wisdom. Sometimes God allows failure to protect us from greater destruction. You may never know what He saved you from." I left His office that day, my heart still heavy, but His words clung to me. Even now, years later, I still dream of abroad. In my sleep, I see myself walking the streets of Singapore again. The neon lights, the clean pavements, the trains that run without delay. But then the dream shifts, the lights fade, the roads vanish, and I am standing in the dark, holding nothing, always nothing. I wake drenched in sweat, my heart racing. My wife stays beside me, whispering, "It's only a dream." But it is not just a dream, it is a scar carved into my memory. The hardest part is my children. "Daddy," my eldest once asked, "why did you go abroad if you were just going to come back?" I swallowed hard. "I went so you would have a better life." He frowned. "But our life is worse now." What answer could I give? How do you explain to a child that the world is built on systems designed to break men like me? How do you explain that sometimes a father's love can lead him straight into disaster? Today, I stand before you, not as a man who succeeded, but as a man who survived. I still carry debts. I still feel the sting of laughter from neighbors. I still wonder what life might have been if the agents had spoken truth. But I know this, not all that glitters abroad is gold. Sometimes it is only broken glass waiting to cut you. When men promise you heaven, ask what price they want for your soul, because sometimes they are only selling you a ticket to hell. This is the story of my life, a story written in death and disappointments, in tears and in lessons. A story of a man who chased the world and found nothing, yet discovered a bitter truth worth more than gold. Home, no matter how poor, is still better than a foreign land that eats you alive.